here for the third step. What step? Group
Third
step in healed, accepting forgiveness. You're more powerful than you're healed. 6 steps to living a more powerful, peaceful, inspired soul purpose. What kind of purpose? Soul purpose life. That's why you're here, right?
Yes.
Does that sound like the best? It's also available. So what's the healed system? Just quick review so we know who we're there, where we are. Honor God within yourself. Now here's a 6-step system that was divinely given because we're spirits on a human journey. We're here to fulfill a soul purpose. You can't, philosophy is you can't avoid it. That's why you're here. And everything that's happened in your life is leading you to the one place. So one day sitting at my dining room table, this system fell on me, and here it is. Honor God within yourself. Why is that? Because we're spirits on a human journey. So once we associate with our divinity and we can really tap into that, not just know it by knowledge, but actually feel it in our body as consciousness, then we can learn how to exercise loving ourselves and others. So when you understand and you feel and you have awareness of that you're a spiritual being first, your desire and ability, actually, consciousness to love yourself really expands and radiates on a whole nother level. When that happens, you see yourself as one with humanity, and then at that point, now you can look at your past and you can truly forgive, and really understanding that you're on a soul journey. We're going to talk about this part tonight. That you're a spirit on a human journey. Your soul is on a journey to evolve, and then you begin to see how everything in your life was an evolution in your consciousness, and it had a reason and it had a benefit, and every pain may have given you not only your greatest gift, but how your pains and problems, challenges you've had in the past have led you straight into your purpose. Now once you get that, once you release all the emotional energy, then you can live with present. Spiritual time is vertical. Clock time is past, present, future, but in spiritual time, we really only have this moment. This is the reality of time. When we get into presence, because we've released all the emotional energy, then truly we can hear the whispers of our innate and the whispers of God inside us. Now we can actually find and establish our purpose and mission, and then once we get that, we can deliver it to the world. So we've already gone through H&E. This is a monthly progression. This is the 3rd month we're doing this. The purpose of this really is to give you an introduction. So we're going to talk maybe an hour and 15, 20 minutes or so. And really this is going to be a lot of information. So the information will give you a new perspective on yourself, why you're here, your past, and your whole purpose on your life. We don't have time to go through a lot of the clearing experiences, but we did just give an experience where we went through H&E 2 days. We spent 8 hours on each one. There is a Your More Powerful coaching system. This is more of an introduction, and if this intrigues you, then the real experience is in the coaching group and actually spending 8 hours going through one step. Now that may sound like a lot of work, but what happens is you're definitely going to face yourself, but it's really geared for people that are ready for a transformation, that are ready to take their life to another level. When you go through these experiences, you will be a more clear, more powerful version of yourself. So tonight, what we're going to go through is A. Accept forgiveness for who?
Yourself.
I know. Now look at this. How cool is this? These are the chains of limitations and mindset. Man, you can break the chains and you can be free. How cool is that?
Cool.
So let's go through what really is forgiveness. How do we move through it? How do we really look at ourselves, and how we realize that most of our stuff in our past is really a perception and illusion anyway. So we get to that point, man, you can let your shit go. How cool is that? Yeah, it is. Well, what's forgiveness defined? And I think this is fascinating. Renunciation means giving up resentment, letting go of indignation. What's the definition of indignation? We had to look it up on Google last night. What is it? It's letting go of a perceived trauma. What was that word? Perceived trauma. So and now let's keep going. Or anger, what? What's that word? Perceived offense, disagreement, or mistake. Which means what? Every act that hurts us is based on one thing. Perception.
Yeah.
It's based on your perception. So just by the definition alone, you already know every trauma in your past is a perception based on your consciousness. Now, I'm not trying to minimize any trauma. There's people who are abused physically. I mean, there's people who have been through radical abuse of humanity. It's not to lessen any abuse. What it is to look at your human experience from a divine consciousness. And that's what it is. It's not to lessen any abuse, anything you've been through. I mean, the horrific hell that people can go through. And one thing we talked about in the Your More Powerful Experience exercise, loving yourself and others, you may remember, is you can't find heaven by resisting hell. In other words, you can't try and push away hell and find heaven, because what you resist persists. So until we come into awareness and we're willing to face that experience and release it, then we can't find heaven, and then we remain locked in those chains. So you can't find heaven by resisting hell. That's not how you get there. That's not the process. That's not the process of releasing. So here, forgiveness, no longer demanding punishment, right? So when we need to forgive, what are we doing? We're punishing others, and most of all, who are we really punishing?
Ourselves.
We're punishing ourselves. So we learned that in the last one, giving and receiving are simultaneous. So whatever you do, when you criticize someone, your brain actually only knows what it experiences. So from a human level, we only know what we experience. Your brain doesn't know what's outside or what's inside. So if you criticize, what are you experiencing?
Pain.
Criticism. If you judge, what are you experiencing? Judgment. And that's why in the Bible it says, if you judge, you will be judged. Not because another person will judge you back, because it's the law of karma and all that. I'm not saying, it's all that. But what it is whatever you experience is what you feel in your body. So truly, when you begin to love yourself on a higher level, you don't even want to do that, because you've already released the pain. So you have to get to that level to be able to truly understand forgiveness. Okay, or begin. Forgiveness is a cleansing. Now this isn't anything that you guys don't already know. The part that becomes a new idea or reference point is that whatever you have to forgive is a perception. And whose perception is it? Say mine.
Mine.
And looking at it from a human, which is actually a lower consciousness as opposed to a divine consciousness. Because, I'll go through all this. So you're a human being you're not a human being on a spiritual journey, you're a spirit on a human journey. Now we go through this every time. Why? Because when you have the reference point of a spirit on a human journey, then you realize I'm not my body and I'm not my mind. I'm not my mind. My mind is a tool that solves problems. It's a strategic tool. So if you don't have a problem, what's it going to do? It's going to create a problem because it needs shit to solve. You know what I mean? And that's it. Because what do? We went through this last time, so as a quick review, just to give a nice frame. We're trying to frame this. Have you ever been in a relationship and things are going good and you're like, my God, how long is this going to last? And then you find out you're picking little things and you're picking things. Because the things that you pick, number one, it's not only your mind trying to solve a problem, but it's you being self-critical of yourself. And so what you're going to do and what you're going to learn later is every behavior is an expression of that individual's relationship with their self. Every behavior is an expression of that person's relationship with their self. Yeah.
We need to put that on a t-shirt.
So here's your responsibility. You guys ready? You're going to notice these slides from last weekend. Your responsibility as a human on a spiritual journey is to be able to identify your limiting beliefs, to be able to identify where your humanity and your mind is ruling your life, as opposed to a higher consciousness associating with your divinity is ruling your life. So that means you move from limiting beliefs to empowering beliefs. Now, how cool is that? If you can identify limiting beliefs, where they started, how to let those go so you can feel more empowered from the inside out, where you're not being pushed around like a sailboat by the wind. You actually, in an ocean, you actually have your rudder in the water and you're using the wind as a tool. Is that how you get from, it's actually fun that way, that's called sailing, right? So sailing is pretty cool. That's what sailing is. You gotta have your rudder in the water, otherwise you're not really sailing, you're just being pushed around by the wind. You know, and have we ever felt pushed around by the wind in life, right? That's because we associate it more. Because shit's gonna happen, man. The world, things happen. You can't stop it. You can only move with it. And that's why everything is perception. Got it? The relationship with yourself determines your relationship with others. That is your reference point. That's it. Now this takes responsibility. To be able to say, why do I have challenges in my relationship? Well, then we can look in the mirror. First of all, that's always the first place to look, right? What's that song by Michael Jackson? Man in the mirror, right? You want to change the world, you got to look in the mirror. That's where it all begins. So how do you know the relationship with yourself? Isn't that the question you were just asking? Were you just asking that question? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks. Now you're with me. Number one, how do you know the relationship with yourself? Because you look at your internal language. What are you saying about yourself and others?
To yourself.
To yourself. And you know, there's the old mantra, if you talk to yourself, if you talk to your friends like you talk to yourself, you wouldn't have any friends, right? So sometimes our internal language is very self-deprecating. How we feel about ourselves. How we, not only that, what story are you telling? The story of a violation in a relationship, a story of stress at work, you know, because things happen. And because of our perception of what happened, then we have a story of violation. Does it mean that you weren't hurt? No, it doesn't mean that. Does it mean the pain you feel is real? Yes, it is, and that's a human experience. And this is why it's so important when you have a spiritual reference point and you understand you're on a human journey, then as a human, we are emotional beings. We are emotion in motion. We are spirit, mind, body. Now, our body is a physical manifestation of our thoughts, of our emotions. We're energetic beings, and our emotions are driving us. Our emotions drive our behaviors. The meaning that we assign to things that determine what emotions we experience, that determine our limiting beliefs, that determine why we end up so frustrated. But things are going to happen. So it's our perception to say, you know what, this person ripped me off and we feel justified. This is why I'm in this situation and she cheated on me or he cheated on me and blah, 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 blah. And you can go on and on and on and on and on. Yes. And on and on and on and on. And on and on and on and on. Would you guys agree? So here's you know, but what you're doing is, here's how you tell when you actually catch yourself in mindfulness. And say, listen, if I actually step out of myself and observe myself telling this story, is this story empowering me or is it limiting me?
Limiting.
And when you actually can look at yourself objectively and saying, is this story getting me what I want? Is this story giving me love in my relationship? Is this story bringing me success in my career? Is this story helping me to love myself more? Is it loving or is it hurting? And many times it's hurting, right? Because of the meaning and perception that we had regarding that incident. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong. All I'm saying is, how do you determine the relationship with yourself? So if we are going to step from limitation into empowerment, the ability to look at ourselves objectively and be able to say, am I hurting or am I helping? And to keep it real simple. And many times, what's the answer?
Hurting.
Hurting, because we're buried in our humanity. What's the last one? How do you speak about others? How do you speak about other people? How do you criticize? Even internally, what are you experiencing? Even if I don't say anything, can you step back from yourself and say, wow, I just judged that person? Now, when we are a spirit on a human journey, we see that the innate in another person is the same as the innate in us. Now, we don't have to agree with the way they dress. We don't have to agree with the way they talk. We don't have to agree with the way they smell. Maybe they need to brush their teeth a little bit often. Who knows what the heck they're doing? Maybe they're really loud, and maybe they're disruptive, and who knows what their consciousness is. But they are on a soul journey, one with God, whether they know it or not. Right? And we don't have the same soul purpose. We don't have the same experience. But then you learn to honor them at the level they're conscious. But do you judge them? And when you do judge them, or criticize or disagree, when you can step back and say, wow, what did I just do? How did I feel when I made that criticism? And the reality is, if you actually feel it in your body, you don't feel good because you're going to feel criticism. And then you realize, okay, why do we go through this in the last section, E? Why do I do that? Am I using that to justify my own position? And many times we use it as comparison because we grow up comparing. We're raised from separation. You're better than me here, and all this. We compare ourselves, an athlete, and income, and all this stuff. So we're raised in a society with separation and comparison. So a lot of times we judge others because we're just trying to place ourselves. It gives us a position, and it gives us security when we know our position, even when we don't like it. It's all an illusion. It's all perception. So one of the things we also go through in the last section is identifying what in the You're More Powerful coaching, what are your innate God-given gifts and how to bring those out. Now, knowledge is power. Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. Execution is power. So when it comes to forgiveness, acting, knowing is nothing. Now we're going to go through a lot of knowledge tonight, and we're going to give you an exercise at the end. But know that knowledge doesn't do you anything other than you're really friggin' smart, sitting on the couch, miserable, at night by yourself, probably. And it's even worse when you're sleeping next to a partner and you still feel by yourself. You could be in the middle of 1,000 people and feel totally alone, or you could be at home by yourself, physically by yourself, in complete joy.
Yeah.
That's all perspective. Sometimes that's even better, isn't it? So first premise, you are not your conditions. You are not what you've been through in your life. So there's the old mantra, I am who I am because of what I've been through. That is not true. It's only true if you only want to understand your humanity. If you ever want a stronger inside out, above down power to really tap into your power, then you realize it's not true. Because you understand you came in for a reason. I'm a spirit having a human experience, and everything I've been through has been for a reason. And it's allowing my soul to evolve. Our spirit comes into our body to learn and to have a human experience. Otherwise, why would we leave heaven, whether, metaphorical heaven or the spiritual world or literally heaven, to come into a body to experience pain and humanity? Because it's an evolution that our soul is here to learn, right? And to have experience. Otherwise, we'd be living in total bliss all the time, which sounds like totally awesome. And that's where religion says, and people say, I can't wait to go to heaven till the end and get out of this pain and go meet Jesus and be blah, 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 blah. In our Lord's Prayer, it says, thy will be done on earth, say right now, as it is in heaven. Right? So we are supposed to, that tells you our responsibility is to find our spiritual consciousness on earth, in this body, in this life. Yeah. Isn't that our Lord's Prayer says right now? I almost said MFR. But God said, come on, man, it's just words. Right now, it's not wait till you die. You can wait till you die, and you will attain that consciousness. But I think we should do it right now. Yeah. I don't want to wait till then. Your spirit comes out of your body, and then wow, that was cool. Too bad for that dude. You know what I mean? Why don't we just do it now? Everything else is learned. So once you establish that, and you say, I don't know what the reason is. I have a whole shitload of pain that I've been carrying around. But if I can at least start with a belief system that my perspective is what I learned. And you can just start there. You don't have to know how. Is there anybody who watched TNT this morning? One? Oh my God. The pain that I experience is overwhelming.
What time?
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, same
Tuesday
time.
morning, doesn't matter what time, it already says it in the title, Tuesday morning. Transformation. So anyway, it's two words. It's how, it's being before doing, right? Doing is how, being is who. So if we actually identify with who, before we do how, what we do will be, and the energy we do it with, and the consciousness you do it will be significantly different, don't you think? What do you think?
I think.
Can I get an amen on that one?
Amen.
Some more group participation. Everything in your life is guiding you toward your soul purpose. Now, can you prove it? Only if you have a higher consciousness. So these are beliefs that you can choose to have. And as we go through this section, we're going to show you one that is find the gift to release the pain. So just as a quick example, if you look at Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, a woman changed the laws around the world on drunk driving. Why? Because her daughter was killed by a drunk driver. Now there's a great book called Embraced by the Light. It was written by Betty Eadie. She ended up getting a disease, being in the hospital. It wasn't really a disease, it was a health condition. She actually died and went to heaven. She met Jesus. He showed her how this whole thing works, spirit world, heaven, earth, why we're here, and really, and the explanation that she gets. And then she actually has to come back there. She's like, no, I want to stay here. He's like, no, you got a job. So she went from being a nurse into a world spiritual leader, sold millions of books of Embraced by the Light, came back, wrote everything in her experience, sold millions of books, spoke on stages all over the world, changed her life purpose, and it's an amazing life-changing perception of a book. And it actually helped me to create a foundation. So the whole thing is, when you look, she died and came back, changed her whole life. Is that a gift? Dying and coming back, right?
Wow.
So Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, her daughter gets killed. There's NVIC, National Vaccination Information Center, where a woman, her son became autistic from a DPT vaccination, and now she has an organization that gets money from the government for vaccine damaged kids, either from sudden infant death, or they're autistic, or brain damage, whatever it happens. So now, how did that purpose? Because she speaks on stages all over the world. Barbara Lowe Fisher, she's spoken at our seminars, our chiropractic seminars before. So if you look at, sometimes our soul purpose comes from our greatest pain. A woman gets raped, and then she has a home for unwed mothers, or whatever. A lot of times it's our pain that creates our purpose. There's a guy, he was an ex-SEAL team. He goes into foreign countries, mostly into Mexico, and rescues young girls that were kidnapped from America for sex trafficking. He goes and brings them back. Like, that's pain. But look at his purpose. It's also fulfillment. When you're sitting in the living room with the parents and you brought their daughter home, right? So now, is that a purpose? Now, what did he go through? He went through fighting in wars and killing people, and probably with his bare hands, to become a SEAL, so he could, not only did he help whatever mission he was on, but what's he really doing? He has the knowledge to go into very dangerous areas with a team that's highly trained. Because they went through that pain, they have the training to rescue young girls. See what I mean? So every step, even though it may be painful, has a reason. And so when you understand that, you can look back on your life and you can redefine your initial perception. How cool is that? Cool. Forgiveness is not completed when it's only in your mind. So people say, you know what, I forgive you. But the problem is, your emotional energy is still stored in your body. You're like, okay, I forgive you, but I'm still pissed. You know how? Because 5 years later, that memory comes up, and you're like, oh, I hate that person. Oh, no pointing fingers. Pointing fingers not allowed. We're all humans on a soul journey. Okay. But that's it. So how do you know? When you haven't forgiven it, the energy is still stored. Now what happens? Your spirit, mind, body, have you ever recalled events in your life and you feel the emotion? You're like, oh God, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Why do you have that? Because you may have forgiven in your mind, but you haven't forgiven in your body. You haven't released the emotion. And all that emotional energy is what's clouding your mind, what's clouding your intuition, is what's giving you limiting beliefs, is what's holding you back from your soul purpose, and it's causing you pain and chaos. That's it. Forgiveness is about releasing energy. It's not about deciding to forgive. That's not what it is. That's not total forgiveness. And how do you know? Because your subconscious mind, you ever have memories keep popping up, and you're like, oh, right, we already established that? Because your subconscious mind is telling you, nope, still in here. So why does it keep bringing that event into your mind so you can feel it in your body? Do you think your spirit doesn't know? Do you think your spirit knows what your soul purpose is? Do you think that that may be holding you back from attaining the consciousness of who you really are?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So when these things happen, then you understand, shit, I need to let that go. How do I do it? We got the process.
Let's forget about the patient today, but
Right.
Which one?
So if you haven't released the energy, okay, that's enough from the peanut gallery. You've not truly forgiven. If you haven't released the energy, no, you have not truly forgiven. But who's the hardest person to forgive? You're recalling to give yourself a new opportunity. That's it. Every time you recall something, you're giving yourself, who? Say myself,
Myself.
a new opportunity to let the energy go. Are there times when you have multiple of those memories coming up in one day?
Yes.
Do you have, does that happen more than one time a day? It could. Some days. May not be every day. So here's the deal. We carry the guilt from the past and we continue to crucify ourselves. So if we look at a cross, here's the thing. Our humanity is conditioned to crucify. It's familiar. We're conditioned because we have energy. We're conditioned to self-deprecate. We're conditioned to have that internal language. And so it's easier, and I take this out of exercising yourself and others, it's easier to be self-deprecating than it is to be self-empowering. Because it's a habit.
yeah.
And so as much as it makes zero logical sense, now I know this makes no logical sense, but if you still have the emotional energy, it's literally easier to put yourself on the metaphorical cross than it is to love yourself like God loves you. Love your divinity, because you may not know how. If you have that energy in you, you may not know how to completely love yourself to that level. And so what you do is you do what's familiar, which is self-limit. So when we know that, then all we know is it's habit. It's just a habit. Can you change a habit? Can you change a habit? You have to decide, right? So the thing is, you haven't called that experience complete. Now we went through this last weekend of how do you love yourself? Because if you say, well, I learned my lesson, and we use the example, let's say there was infidelity in a relationship. And so, you know what? I left the relationship, so you think, I learned, I left, and then you go into your next relationship, and you're looking for things where there's infidelity. Right? And so you become suspicious of things, there's actions you may take that can become self-destructive because you think you learned, but you didn't let go of the energy. So what's happening is forgiveness. You haven't forgiven. You haven't let go of the energy. Forgiveness is forgetting. Now, what do people say? Well, I forgive, but I don't forget. That's not forgiveness. How many times you heard that? I forgive, but I don't forget. Anybody in the room said that? You don't have to raise your hand. Okay, way to be honest. You forgive, but you don't forget. Well, here's why forgiveness truly is forgetting. Because when you release the emotion, you don't have a reason to remember.
Right.
Because
you remember.
Well, you remember in your mind, but the difference is when you release the emotional energy becomes a fact in your life. Like, yes, there was infidelity, but when you think about it, I don't have a big emotional charge. Yeah, so I use an example when I was going through this with Jade. I used an example when I was 16. Well, my mom smoked all the time, so maybe I was like 14 or 15. And you know, hey, I want to be cool. I want to smoke cigarettes. Anybody ever do that? I did for like a week.
Yeah, Jada walked in.
Right? And so I'm sitting in a mall, and I'm like, oh shit, my mom just walked by, and I'm sitting there with a cigarette with 3 of my friends. So I walk up to her, it's cut to my hand, have a little conversation. But then when I got home, she goes, you know, I smoke all the time, so I'm not going to tell you what to do. You know, it's bad for you. You decide. Right there, I never touched a cigarette again. But the thing is, if someone said to me today, if you said, hey, do you smoke? I'd be like, are you freaking crazy? You have no idea who I am, right? Because if you even ask that question, like, that's not even a thought in my mind. Because I completed that at 15.
And you forgot about it.
So I forgot it, right? And it's the same thing with emotion. When your lesson is completed energetically, you don't have a reason to remember. So if a person says, are you jealous? You'd say, heck no. I'm not jealous. Now people will say, heck no, I'm not jealous, because they don't want to be jealous, but they may still have that energy in them, and then the actions may be different, may be factually different, right? So the thing is, when it becomes a fact in your life, you can talk about it, but I don't have emotional energy on it. So it doesn't mean you don't remember the incident. It means I don't have a reason for my subconscious mind to keep recalling it and actually affect my behavior now. That's what forgetting is. So if you say, I forgive and I don't forget, what you're doing is wiring into you that you keep the emotion of that perceived violation. Now, why is a violation perceived? Well, he or she cheated on me, so that was it, you know. Well, we're going to get into why is perception here in a little bit. So when you lose the emotional attachment, you forget because there's no need to remember. Unless it comes up in a conversation. Right? So it comes and you're like, yeah, dude, I've totally been through that. I remember this. Yeah, hey, I can totally relate. As opposed to, oh my God, that is absolutely ridiculous. You know, I mean, you look at the tone of the body language, the facial expression, because you know, like someone goes, well, my ex and blah, 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 and you know, shit, they didn't get over that shit. I mean, you're just listening to their tone, you're looking at them, you know, you're still carrying that. No, I'm over it. No, you're not. Right? So we know that innately, but we don't always believe that in ourselves. Why? Because when we carry that emotion and we tell our story, one of the ways you know a relationship with yourself is what? Look at the story you're telling. It actually meets our human needs of connection and certainty. We actually connect with ourselves. We feel justified. It gives us significance. We feel more important. So we're actually meeting emotional needs. We're just not meeting them in a way that's moving us into empowerment. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You can meet these human emotional needs in destructive ways, or you can meet them in empowering ways. That's why it's our responsibility to be able to identify what's our limiting beliefs and how can we change them into empowering beliefs. This is the healed system, right? So if you're still going over it, you haven't forgotten, you believe on a subconscious level, you're still learning that lesson. Now you think, how could I be learning the lesson when he cheated on me and we broke up? Well, that was the action, but if you're looking for those same things, or you're recreating the same behaviors, or not even, it doesn't matter if it's infidelity, but you're recreating similar problems in the next relationship, you still have an emotional attachment that is still functioning on the same consciousness and wavelength, so to speak. Does that make sense? So in other words, you haven't, because you haven't let go of it, on a subconscious emotional level, you don't believe you've learned. You still want to practice to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I'm going to have all these fear-based actions to make sure I don't end up in this position, but you can't find heaven by resisting hell.
That's a good one.
So having a fear-based motivation does not get you into empowerment. It creates actions that protect yourself, so you may be protected, but inside, what are you experiencing?
Pain.
Anxiety and pain, because you haven't let the emotion go. You haven't literally completed that lesson. Now, how many life lessons are there in life?
Lunch.
Can you count?
No.
Well, it's not infinite because we have a finite amount of time, but there's so many you couldn't even begin to want to count. You know, I mean, you get those by the time you're 8, right? So there's so many, and here we are decades later. So what are you still learning? So here's the question, what do you feel guilty about? We actually went through this in the You're More Powerful coaching. What do you feel guilty about? What stored emotions? What are you trying to avoid? What are you resisting? How do you experience pain? And here's where, if you ever decide to move into that, we're actually going to go through this, look what you're hanging on to, help you identify it and clear it, so that you can actually forget it, complete that lesson, and move on, so that same thing isn't driving your behaviors. How cool is that? In order to attract and make room for your new good, you got to create space. How do you create emotional space? By letting go and releasing the old stuck emotions. So how can you possibly move forward onto something greater when your past is pushing you into your present and future, rather than inspiration pulling you into a great present and future? And the reality is you're not. That emotion is the barrier. It's the barrier between you and God. It's the barrier between your humanity and your divinity, because those deeply seated fears and emotions are what's driving your behavior. And you don't realize it because it's subconscious. By letting go of the lesser, you automatically make room for your greater good to come in. Catherine Ponder was a Christian minister. She wrote The Dynamic Laws of Prosperity. Now here's the thing. When you read prosperity books, they are spiritually based books. This book is about this thick. Christian minister. It is all spiritual principles on how to live with prosperity. How can you have a prosperous life if you're hanging on to old emotions? Now there's lots of people. There's people that are billionaires that are freaking miserable, right? That have terrible marriages, that are depressed, they have all kinds of things. Now there's billionaires that are exceedingly joyful and happy. So it's not whether you're a billionaire, money just brings out who you already are. So if you're freaking miserable from the inside out, you're going to be miserable broke or miserable being a billionaire. You're still freaking miserable. You can still get cancer, you can still get all those things, right? I'm paraphrasing, but I'm going to give the principle. Steve Jobs was one on his deathbed. He has multiple quotes as he was dying, was like he had everything the world could offer, but the thing he regretted was a relationship with his daughter. And he said, you know, I've had everything that any person can ask for, but he regretted the love that he didn't experience. And that was it. Right? I mean, that was his lesson. So we can be loving, we can let go of it, regardless of the conditions outside, but then what's the probability that we can attain the things we want outside? Because we do it with love. By the way, heart energy is 5,000 times the manifesting power than mind energy. So once we take that 18-inch journey from our head to our heart, the probability that we're going to get there becomes much greater. In order to forgive, you got to truly release emotion of the past. You got to feel and associate with your divinity and experience your one with God. That's why honor God within yourself is first. How can you let go if you don't understand your divinity? How can you reframe and look at all the pain that you've been through as a perception and be able to reframe the meaning if you can't attach to your divinity first? Then you got to love yourself like God loves you. That's why the next step is, what is it? Exercising loving yourself for others. Because once you understand your divine reference point and you love yourself, then you can get past the guilt and the shame and the resentment. How can you forgive if you're harboring shame? How can you forgive if you're harboring guilt? How can you forgive if you don't love yourself enough? Right? When you learn to love yourself and you learn to associate with your divinity, then it's much easier. Exercise loving yourself and others took me almost a year to write. It took me 8 to 9 months to write, but once I got that, then it only took me 4 months to write forgiveness. That just kept pouring out because I understood it from a higher consciousness. I was also divinely downloaded a bunch of stuff. So the pain and limiting emotions can linger the longest within ourselves, which means what? Who's the hardest person to forgive?
Yourself.
Ourselves. It's way easier to forgive other people than ourselves. That's why it's accepting forgiveness for yourself and others. It's exercise love for yourself and others. Right? It says, what are the 2 greatest commandments? Love God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. And then it's love your neighbor as yourself. So what's it saying? Not love your neighbor. It's saying love yourself so you can love your neighbor. Now most people don't get that. They think just love your neighbor, and they read as yourself, but they don't get that's where it starts. But what's number 1? Love God. Honor God first, right? And then exercise loving yourself. And then once you do that, now you can accept forgiveness for yourself. 4 subconscious beliefs. Number 1, if you believe you're a spiritual being, you know that on a subconscious level. Number 2, the universe or God has intention, meaning everything in your life has a reason. Number 3, God always works everything in your favor. When you have this belief system, then it doesn't matter what's on the outside. Doesn't feel good. Could be a lot of pain. But when I automatically know, whatever I see that looks like a mountain of terror on the outside, number 1, this too shall pass. Number 2, there's a lesson in it for me. And when I learn the lesson, then the condition will disappear. So the faster you find the gift, the faster you release the pain, the faster whatever is in front of you goes away. That's really it. So when you can find the gift, another quote in Catherine Ponder, we went through this in exercise, loving yourself and others, every challenge is a test of love. When you meet that challenge with love, the challenge disappears. If you don't, that challenge will continue. So if every problem is a test of love, then when you meet it with love, what's that mean? You find the gift, you release the pain, the condition dissipates. The condition will transmute from pain into love, which means then you have a problem. You have a problem if you love it? No. If you love your problems, all of a sudden they're not problems. And you will fulfill your soul purpose. So this one I do all the time because you're like, I have no idea, I have this vision, I have no idea how to get there, but I know I will get there. I don't know the path, God's going to show me how. We act and we work and we do stuff every day. I know I will get there no matter how hopeless or how confused you are in the moment. That's why you're here. You're here to fulfill it. And if you have a vision for it, you will fulfill it. Sometimes that's all, that faith is all you have because the problems outside of you look so freaking big and you don't know what to do that that's all you have. Hey, there's a gift in it. God's given me something to learn. And I know it's only temporary, it's going to go away, and I will fulfill my purpose. And that gives you confidence. Those beliefs give you confidence to face anything. So we have this veil. Neil Donald Walsh, veil of forgetfulness or ignorance. You talk about in conversation with God. It's your more powerful journey of the soul. It's part of our journey to remember ourselves. So a veil is like our humanity. Now imagine you're in the spirit world, you come into this body. Now if you took all the knowledge that you have in the spirit world and you came into this body, you'd still be immersed in heaven. Right? Would you experience pain? No. Would you experience confusion? Would you experience anger? Would you experience depression if you had consciousness of God?
No.
No. But why would a soul come in there? So we have to come in with this veil. Otherwise, we won't have a human experience. We would just have a divine experience in a human body, which would be totally blissful and joyful all the time. You know, it'd be manifesting stuff all the time. You know what I mean? That's what it'd be. So this is part of our purpose. Now, if the veil was never present, you couldn't have a human experience. So when you understand this concept, then you understand there's a reason for my ignorance. Yet, I can lift the veil. I can actually get beyond my humanity and get into my divinity, and there's spiritual teachers all over the world that are teaching us this. The consciousness of the planet is evolving. There's more and more and more spiritual teachers saying the same thing all the time. Right? There's a rise in consciousness in the universe. So once you understand that I've been given a veil, I can consciously part that veil. and I can see through the veil of my humanity and actually see the world with divine eyes. How cool is that?
Cool.
It's totally cool. Forgiveness is a vehicle to release and feel what's already inside us to be expressed even in the most extreme conditions. So we look at Jesus when he's on the cross. Right before he dies, what's he say? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. So right to the last second, even under the most extreme condition, tortured literally to death, what's that consciousness like? Forgive them. Forgive them of what? They're so afraid of his message. They're so afraid that we might actually be who he says we are. We can have an independent relationship with God. Who is he crucified by? Religion. He's crucified because the community the country was under the Roman army, but it was under religious control. He was a threat to religion, which says you have to follow these rules. And he's like, you don't have to follow any of these freaking rules. You can have a relation. You can have spiritual independence. So forgive them, for they not know what they do. They're afraid of the power that he says who you really are. Because what if it was true? We'd be more powerful than we think. Isn't that interesting? You guys just connect that right now. Love does not require bravery or courage. It requires you to be clear of all your misinterpretations and illusions in order to feel the desire and ability to love at the deepest levels. So think about that. Love doesn't require bravery or courage. It requires letting go of all the stuff that's holding who you innately are back. That's it. You don't have to be courageous. You don't have to face your vulnerability. It's just a matter of letting go of all the misinterpretations so you can be who you really are. Then love naturally flows from you. Right? Now when you get in a relationship, long-term relationships, can your partner do things that are irritating?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. If we're not creating our own problem, first of all, because we're different moods, we have different chemistries, we have different physiologies, we have different perspectives, and then what it is if you're a naturally loving being, are you going to go back and forth in your humanity? Yeah, so you can look at your friends, you can look at relationships, you can look at your coworkers, you can look at your partner, and are there going to be moments where you're irritated with people? Yeah, well, once you understand that's my perspective, then the thing is you can always come back to love. You can always choose love because you can learn how to release your misinterpretation. Because forgiveness isn't an act, it's a life. Man, we're on a human journey. Like if you don't develop this skill, you're just going to keep building husks on the corn. You know what I mean? Like when you look at a corn, you pick a cob off the plant, it's got husks on it. The husk, that's a metaphor with a husker like our humanity, but you want to eat the corn on the inside. That's who you are on the inside. But you got to peel back all the stuff to get to the good stuff, don't you? Right? And that's our humanity. You got to learn how to peel off your humanity because that stuff's just going to keep growing. You're going to go through life. So if you don't develop the skill of how to see things from a higher consciousness, you're just going to have more and more husks growing on you all the time. And then there's so many husks, eventually you can't even realize, you can't even find the corn anymore. It's so buried on the inside, it's gone. But is it really gone? No, because that's who you are. You just don't know how to tap into it because you're harboring so many emotions. So this is a skill that the faster you develop this skill and this consciousness, the easier life's going to be. Because you just learn to let go of stuff as it happens. You learn to let go as it happens. The lowest denominator of your emotion within your unconscious mind controls your life. The lowest denominator, meaning what's ruling your life, are your subconscious emotions. It's stuff that happened years and years and years ago. It could be last week as well, right? But typically, it's when we were young. Journey of the soul. You come into this life with a veil to have a human experience. You do have a predestined soul purpose, but you have to go through, a lot of times you have to go through your pain to find it. All of this was chosen in advance. Now, if you see yourself as an eternal being coming into this, right? As you to play this role in this life with this purpose. You actually are coming in with the consciousness and the wisdom of the universe. But if you have that, man, you'd be like Jesus, right? You live this life actually conscious of everything. There would be no disease. There would be nothing. Everybody would be hugging each other all the time. It'd be great, right? But that's not what happens. So we come in with this veil. So when you have this belief system, you actually choose your experiences. Now this was something I used to tell my son, because my son, when I came into his life, his father left, and then his mom died when he was 11. So I would teach him about spirituality. I would talk to him like he's a spirit in a human body, and I would tell him, I'm your dad, God's your father. I'm surely going to do things that are going to piss you off. So you might need to get a better job, because you might need some counseling by the time you're 30. However, I will surely make mistakes, but he's your father, and look at it like you came in. You picked your father. You picked that he would leave. You picked that your mom would pass away. You picked these challenges because this is how your soul's going to evolve. You picked it in advance. So that way you take responsibility for it. You know what I mean? From a spiritual level, and then you can find the lesson. Now you can find the gift. So every event and person is leading you through the experience to guide you to that purpose. From your greatest pain can emerge your purpose. So you know, are you going to go through pain in your life?
Yes.
Do you expect it?
Yes.
Right. Pain is part of life. So as long as you expect it, you don't look for it, but you're not surprised when it happens. Right? So that means you're on a soul journey, because your soul is here to evolve in this body. Right? The pain of humanity is not a barrier to evolve. So when you're living in your body and you see pain as a barrier, as you see pain as a limitation, from a divine spirit soul perspective, human pain, emotional pain, is not a barrier to evolution. It's actually a vehicle to evolution. Because do you learn everything from pleasure? Does hell no sound like an answer, right? Do you learn from pleasure, or do you learn more from pain? That's how we learn. We're going to learn from pain. So once you know pain is not a barrier to my evolution, it actually can be a vehicle. It doesn't mean that we look for it, but it means as we experience it, we can process it so it doesn't become a limitation and continue to grow on us like husks on corn. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's part of the evolutionary process, man. It's just what it is. And that's how you see yourself as a spirit living human experience. So everyone is living at their level of consciousness. That means you accept, part of releasing the pain and finding the gift is accepting everyone that they're functioning at their own level of consciousness on their journey with God. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to associate with them. You can love them unconditionally as another innate being and a human, as a spirit in a human body, on a spiritual level, but it doesn't mean you have to live your life with them. People come in your life. This was from H.E.A.L.E.D. and also was DMT. People come in your life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime. Right? Hurt people hurt people. Have you heard that? Why? Because people who are feeling pain, they have to express their pain, because as they express it, it's healing. So imagine that. Now this could be a mind bender. As a person violates or creates pain for another person, they're not even associating that they're creating pain. All they're doing is releasing their own pain. And as they release their pain, they actually feel better. Now once they feel better, they could look back and have boatloads of regret. Right? So they, like a lot of serial killers, they want to be caught. Right? They're just smart for a while. Or some never get caught. But it's because of whatever they have inside them, they have to violate or kill or whatever pain. You know, like they say, rape is not about sex. It's about pain. Because a person, it's not even about the person. They're trying to release their pain. Now, why is this important to understand? Because we have perceived violators in our life. But when you look at what pain do they experience, that's why people who were abused in children, people who were abused tend to be abusers. Why? Because they're still carrying the pain of abuse. And because they carry the pain of abuse, they have to express that pain. Because what if they don't get it out?
They feel hurt.
They can't tolerate all the hurt. So they have to get that pain out so they can get reprieve from their own pain. But what are they causing? Pain in another person. The problem is when we're not at that consciousness, we don't initially have compassion for that person as we're being violated or physically abused or verbally abused. We probably don't appreciate it. But once you come from a higher consciousness and you actually practice this and you become mindful over time, then you're not attached to their abusive behavior. In fact, because you're not attached to it, you tend to attract it less in your life. You don't even attract it. Right? Now as a man, I notice I don't get guys picking on me. You know, like there's some dudes that kind of look at you like, what are you looking at? Because I like to observe people and I think people are really interesting. So I'll look at a built dude, you know, I'd probably stare at them longer than I would an attractive woman because I appreciate their physique. You know what I mean? I'm like, wow, that takes work. I know the pain they've gone through. Or somebody that is very different, right? Like I'll stare, and my mom used to tell me as a kid, Freddie, don't stare. Because I used to stare at people because innately that's who I was, right? I find humanity fascinating, which is that trait is part of why I do this. Because I like to know why people are the way they are, and if they have a limitation, I can show you the way to get out of it. So naturally, as a little kid, what did I do? Stare at everybody, especially if you're different. My mom, stop staring, like I grew up with my mom telling me to stop staring as a little kid. You know, so when new people would come over, my mom, now Freddie, don't stare at them. You know what I mean? I mean, that was the whole thing. So when you get to a consciousness that's above that, you don't even attract to it. So there's guys, you know, they'll kind of like, give me the, what are you looking at? This is the moral of the story. And I smile at them. And then they'll like kind of pat and interrupt and they'll smile back. You know what I mean? So that's the thing, is I'm never getting fights. Now I have friends that grew up fighters or they're highly trained in martial arts, and because they're conditioned like that, they'll stare back like two dudes looking at what the heck are you looking at, and then there's confrontation. Now a lot of guys that are highly trained, they don't fight, but they do tell you, look man, here's the deal, you're going to have so much pain, but I don't want to do that to you. Just sit down and have dinner. Like I don't even have those conversations because I just smile at them. Right? So you don't bring those things in your life, but when you have that energy, you'll tend to attract it. So when you look at people and you observe with compassion, you're not going to attract those violators. And when someone may make that initial move of anger or aggressiveness, you don't even see it like that because you see it as they're operating on their own consciousness. So things don't escalate. It literally, they pass right by you because you're not vibrating at that level. They don't even come near you. And so now your life becomes a lot more peaceful, a lot more joyful. Now, does it mean that there's going to be people that aren't rude? I don't know. I don't usually get rude people in my life because usually if they're a little bit stressed, like, hey, how's it going? Smile, you know, be nice. You know, and you attract bees with honey, not with vinegar, right? So when you learn to pour out honey, you find you get a lot of bees. Who in your life has expressed their pain to you. Now you could, there's a number of people, right? How many people have expressed their pain? Well, my dad was like that because of the pain he went through, raising short temper when he was young. Now he's totally evolved. He's the most peaceful, loving, still opinionated, but you know, Jada has been around many times. He's like the most peaceful, loving guy. Would you agree? You know, take him back into his 30s and 40s, you know, he didn't learn that lesson yet, right? But he found the Lord in his late 40s. So the thing is, we can know when we look at our violators, what were they expressing to us? their pain. Now we can take that on, and because we're emotional beings, we can actually take on the energy. We take on the energy of our parents because we want connection. Because we want connection, we actually absorb their energy. Now we are angry, or we're impatient, or we feel that pain, but then we realize that's not my energy. I've actually taken on many times, we have all these things because we've taken on the energy of the people that were closest to us. It's not even ours. When you can identify it, then you learn to release it. You take on their pain with your perception. Every behavior is an outward expression of an individual's relationship with their self. That's it. So when you see that, then you can observe their level of consciousness. So what you're observing is not just what they're doing. When you get on a higher level and you get above it, you're observing their consciousness. Right? Spiritual evolution occurs as a result of removing obstacles, not acquiring anything new. So, spiritual evolution is a process of releasing. It's not, I have to become something that I'm not. What it is, it's releasing. We're letting go of things. We're already pure and perfect in nature anyway, but what are we hanging on to? And that's it. So we understand, getting to my divine self is not, I don't have to become, because that is an imperfect and inaccurate situation. The whole self-improvement industry is a fallacy, because we get whatever we focus on, right? So if I'm doing this, I have to improve myself. What am I not saying? I have a problem. I'm not good enough. So I have to go through these things so I can be a better form of me, when that's not it. What it is actually letting go of what's not true about you. Because we're already in spirit, we're already a child of God. He made us in his likeness and image. And that's why H is first. So you're eternal. Now imagine your spirit comes into this body. Guess what? You were never born. Your spirit came into a body and your humanity was birthed. But if we come from a spirit world, heaven initially, we come into the body, our spirit was never born. It's eternal. It comes into our humanity, and our humanity was birthed. Then we live through this human life. There's a limitation of matter, so our physical body dies, and what's our spirit do? Continues into eternity again. So if you see yourself as an eternal being, I'm not my body, I'm not my mind, this is a whole nother level of consciousness, then you can tap into the wisdom of the universe that is already inside you, the God consciousness that already lives innately inside of you. It's just becoming conscious of it. And when you become conscious of that, then you let go of all the stuff that you're carrying because it's just not necessary. So we went through this exercise at the end of the last study group of being one with God, right? And then you learn to get that state. Now in the experience, H&E we just gave, we went through that. Actually, you had to leave early, so you weren't there, you missed the whole thing. But the bottom line is, when you truly feel that you are one with God from the inside out, you have no fear, you have no problems, there's nothing to forgive because nothing happened. There's nothing to forgive. It was just an event in your human life that is leading you to your purpose. So when you see you were never born and you'll never die. Now we don't know that many times. We may not become conscious of it until our anatomical eyes close, then we realize our spiritual eyes have always been open. So we won't know that maybe until we pass, and then we actually can leave the body, right? There's many people that have out-of-body experiences, but they're still in the room, right? You hear tons of stories of out-of-body experience. I was floating above my body, looking back at myself in my dead body, right? Because our spiritual eyes are open. We just may not be conscious of it with a spiritual consciousness. But what if we can change our perspective and actually see with those eyes, what would life be like?
Awesome.
Amazing. Right? So you're here for a brief breath. Like we're here for a breath in time. So the question is, how do you want to spend that breath? What breaths do you want to take? How do you want to breathe through your life? And if we're breathing through our life, then we get to choose our level of consciousness. And that's what this whole H.E.A.L.E.D system is about making conscious choice of how we want to metaphorically breathe through this life. Because we can live it at a different level. How cool is that?
Cool. So cool.
Yes. So breathe in life force energy. First steps of forgiveness for yourself and others. 1, present time consciousness. What's that mean? Coming into the moment. Being able to stop and observe yourself into the moment. That's awareness. Now, present time consciousness and awareness can be interchanged. It could be you become aware and then you come into the moment, or it could be you come into the moment and then you gain awareness. So either one, present time consciousness and awareness can be interchanged. Okay? So once you come into awareness, into present time, then you accept. Acceptance is important because you can't find heaven by resisting hell. Acceptance doesn't mean you agree. It means what you're doing is acknowledging this situation exists. Acknowledging maybe that you're observing somebody at their level of consciousness. You're observing that this person is experiencing pain and they're expressing their pain because what they're really expressing is how they feel about themselves. They're trying to get whatever pain that they experience out. So you come into present time, you gain awareness, and you accept this is the way it is. Right? I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to tolerate it. We learn in loving yourself and others, exercise love for yourself and others, that we have core values. Right? So we set boundaries, but I observe it. I don't have to be emotionally attached to it, but I have definite boundaries. Right? Because that's how you love yourself and others. Acceptance, then you have courage. Courage to do what? To take action. So you become aware, you come into present time, either one, you accept what it is, and then you have the courage to take action to love yourself or take action to stop that person from expressing their own pain, which is really helping others love themselves. But that takes courage to set boundaries. It takes courage to execute. It takes courage to stand for your core values and who you are. Would you agree?
Yes.
Now the thing is, in the beginning, it takes courage. And this is what Jada and I would go through, in raising her son. Would be setting boundaries with other people that we won't mention on this Facebook Live. Setting boundaries, right? Because otherwise you're being pushed all over the place. Then when you set boundaries and you experience peace, it doesn't take courage. It actually takes more courage to upset your core values because now you go into chaos. Right? So once you habituate core values and you habituate boundaries, there's no longer courage. Now what there is internal peace. And when you experience that internal peace, execution becomes easy. But in the beginning, it takes awareness, presence, acceptance, courage to execute, to be able to take the right empowered action. Now forgiveness is easy because once you've done this step, whatever this is, you can let it go. Whatever it is that had you go through these steps, you can let it go. And so in real time, as it's happening, you have a process that can help you release emotional energy so it doesn't continue to build up. Right? So it's bad enough that we may already have husks. Not that that's bad, it's just part of life. So let's do one thing, let's not get any more. Right? And then let's pull off the ones that are already on there. Right? Forgiveness is part of the process of returning to energetic balance. Forgiveness is releasing what isn't true, bringing you back into awareness of what is true. Your loving self. And that's what it is. Forgiveness is releasing the perception. When you know from the beginning, it's all about perception. Did you observe a person releasing its own pain, or did you take on their pain that's why you feel violated. When you take on their pain and you assign meaning, you take their pain, it feels painful, and that's why it's a violation. But you actually consciously or subconsciously chose to take that because you don't have to. You can observe it. Sin is missing the mark. That's literally what the word sin means. Archery term for missing the mark. Will be living, really what sin is, the greatest sin, is living by your humanity and never consciously experiencing your divinity. In my opinion, that was Jesus' message. He forgave us for our sin. What's that? Living in our humanity. Never knowing our divinity. Right? He said he could show you the way. He could show you the way to have a relationship with God, be conscious of your divinity, and live that way. Right? The only sin is never in our divinity and living only in your humanity, never fulfilling your sole purpose. There's no sin in heaven. Forgiveness is for humans. God forgave us for our sins before they already happened. God is sinless. He doesn't know sin. He knows love. He knows every hair on your head. You're already forgiven before you even do it. Because in that world, there isn't sin. There's only a human experience. The real sin is never knowing your divinity. Why would a God give you free will and then love you unconditionally and then damn you to hell if you made the wrong choice? Like, I never understood that. So you're going to give me free will, tell me I'm imperfect by religion, and then when I sin, I'm going to spend eternity in hell? But you're an unconditionally loving Father. That never made sense to me. Right? So the forgiveness is for humans so we can release the energy. That's it. Forgiveness isn't from God. We'll have to ask God for forgiveness. No, you don't. You got to forgive yourself. You don't have to ask God for forgiveness. Asking God for forgiveness is an exercise of taking responsibility that you pray to a God that you may believe is unconditionally loving, that you actually want to connect with because you're actually honoring God within yourself. Did you guys catch that? And that's why they say pray to God for forgiveness. Because that is our mentor, if you want to say, our perception of unconditional love. That I can ask you and I already know you're forgiven. Because I can ask my mom, she may or may not forgive me. I can ask my friends, she may or may not forgive me. You can ask your partner, you may or may not get forgiveness. So you associate God above humanity with unconditional love. Now the question is, do you believe it enough to forgive yourself? Because you go, oh God, please forgive me, and continue with self-destructive behavior. But what does asking for God really do? It gives you responsibility for the action. And with responsibility, you have the ability to respond, which means you get to execute. Because knowledge is not power, execution is power. Does that make sense? So we pray to God to forgiveness. We're just establishing a reference point of who we really are. And we're trying to come back to that connection while we work on forgiving ourselves.
Right.
Is that a different perspective? It's far more empowering, don't you think? We must confess our sins so we take responsibility, because trapped emotional energy is the barrier to knowing God within you. You can't keep harboring all that emotional energy and be connected to your innate, because your humanity is getting in the way. It's clouding that. Suffering, your resistance to unity and love is what you perceive as suffering. Right? Your resistance to connection. Since the universe seeks balance, it will continue to provide you with more opportunities to right yourself. Now I put right in quotes. Why? In sailing, when the wind is blowing, it's called keeling. When you keel over and the mast isn't vertical. Taking the mast from whatever angle is back to vertical is called righting. It's righting. The universe will always right. You can't break universal laws. It will always take you back to center. So the thing is, the further you're keeled over, the further you're off center, the more pain you're going to experience to get back to center. God, the universe, will bring you back to center. And if you don't come back to center, you're going to die staying keel. Right? People with a lower conscious, they get cancer, they get congestive heart failure, they get other challenges, right? Why would a person get congestive heart failure? Because they don't love themselves. Why would it attack their heart? Not just because of their diet. There's something in them where they're not connected to their own heart. There's something of how they feel themselves. You just got to leave it there long enough. Right? That's a heart that's failing. Now, I'm not saying that's every person,
No.
but there's a reason. There's a reason there's a disease, and there's almost always some type of emotional connection. Would you guys agree?
Yes. Yes.
That was very strong. Your resistance to take that opportunity, because if you don't right yourself, meaning let go of that emotion, you're going to continually attract that situation.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You ever notice there's a person you may have a problem with, and you have an emotion, and you keep running into them, or you keep running into people just like them,
Oh, God.
or you keep dating the same type of person, or whatever, marrying the same type, it's all the same. Because the problem is, you didn't take the opportunity to complete that lesson. You're still learning.
There we are.
So you're just going to keep bringing it in, because what's the universe going to do? It's going to tell you, hey, dude, girl, you are coming back to center. You don't have a friggin' choice. Just tell me how much pain you want to go through. Pain is your choice. You can't.
True.
Universal laws are laws of energy. They are laws. They are not going to change. So who's going to change? Say, I am.
I am.
Otherwise, you're going to keep gaining more opportunities, but we don't see it as opportunities. What do we see it as? Begins with a P and sounds like? Pain. It's pain.
No pain.
No more pain. Life doesn't happen to you, it happens for you. Give me more. It's not the condition that matters, it's the meaning that matters. Who assigns meaning? Say, I do.
I do.
Men are not disturbed by the things that happen, but by the opinions of the things that happen. Not by the things that happen, by the perception of things that happen.
Makes sense.
Greek philosopher. You can't change the facts of the past. Can you change what happened to you in the past?
No.
No, but what can you change?
The future.
The meaning.
Meaning.
The meaning of your perspective is the emotion that you're harboring. The meaning determines the emotion. Whatever that emotion is,
That's hard.
that is what's running your life. That emotion is what's running your life. And it's subconscious, so do you think about it every day? No, but you're habituating it. The biggest obstacle to change, create problems, something that's inevitable. When you think something that's inevitable, you're not going to try and change it. Right? There are certain things that's inevitable. There are certain people that have a certain consciousness. And they're in your life. Right? Is their consciousness going to be inevitable if they refuse to change? So who has to change?
We do.
By doing what? Acceptance. Right? Awareness. Acceptance.
Draw the line.
Courage. Draw the line. Execution. Right? Something in the past that can't be changed. That's a violation from another person, or that's you. You're not going to change the facts of your past, but what can you change? The meaning. So you're never powerless, because you can always change the meaning. See it from a higher perspective. Something outside of your control. Are things going to happen in your life that you just can't control?
Yes.
What's that mantra in AA? I control the things. I don't worry about things I can't control, and I take action on things that I can. Yeah, whatever. So I mean, that's it, right? Because what are they doing? Serenity prayer, right? So what they're doing is saying, hey man, you don't need to freaking carry all the mountains. What you need to do is, what's the first premise in the 12-step process? There's a power that's bigger than me. So you look, the process to change starts with consciousness.
Awareness.
Awareness of your divinity. Exactly. To forgive us to release. Forgiveness loosens the bonds. We were talking about this last night. This was funny. Loosens the bonds that hold you in the prison. In the what?
Present.
So when we don't let it go, and I was talking to Jade about this last night, because she was talking about something that was bothering her, I go, you closed the door to your prison cell. And she went, ah, that's perspective, because we're helping her find a new perspective on a bit of a challenge in her life, right? So when you maintain that perspective, you're closing the door to your prison cell. But guess what? You have the key. But if you keep the same perspective, you have no awareness that you have the key. What are you doing? Banging your little tin cup up and down the bars, wanting to get attention, telling your story because you closed the door. So now that I'm in the door, I'm all pissed off, and I got to tell my story. So you keep banging your little aluminum cup, making a bunch of noise. But nobody's coming because they don't care. Because who cares? You do. You're the only one that cares about your story. Now the problem is the guard, metaphorical, may come and you may say, well, I'm really sorry that you're really locked in there, but you know what? What's the big deal? And then eventually they don't want to hear the noise anymore. Because you keep telling the same story to the same people. You ever have someone in your life tell the same story, but they don't want to change the noise?
Yes.
So what do? You finally give up on them. You're like, forget it, man. I've already tried to help you. You know what I mean? You don't want any freaking help. Now just shut up. Right? I can't be around you. You know what I mean? Of course, we see things from a higher consciousness. Lucidity creates transformation, flexibility. So freeing yourself of the burdens heightens understanding and clarity. Flexibility leads to transformation. Flexibility in what? Your perspective. Breathe. Dissolution takes place when there's transformation. What's that mean? When you transform to a higher consciousness, you let go of lower consciousness, not only thoughts and habits, people, everything. Because when you transform to a new level of consciousness, your world becomes congruent with that level of consciousness. Meaning old things pass away, all things become new. Thank you very much. So, great participation on that one.
I'm sure what the answer was there.
And it's out of the Bible, so if you read that. So old things pass away, all things become new. It's actually with Christ, all things pass away. So the whole point is, when you go to a higher level of consciousness, things in your life, people and things in your life are going to leave. What's that mean? You don't live in the same house. You have a new car. You change your clothes. Old things pass away, right? Things in your house you sell. You ever notice like you've had things, you want to change your home, you're like, I've had this for a while, kind of like your clothes, well I really don't wear this, so I give this away, and you do that, and then you get new stuff. So as you evolve in consciousness, know that relationships, conditions, new job, a different job, people, and literally physical things will leave. And new things will come in. The problem people have is when you get attached to things and to people. It's not that you're not attached to people and you're unconditionally in love, but there's some people in your life you know they're just a problem, right? There was a little bit of enthusiasm in there. Now, so the thing is, when you cling to things that are going out the back door, then you feel a sense of loss because things are leaving, yet what you didn't do was see what's coming in to the front door. Because as you raise your consciousness, better things will come in the front door, even though good things may leave. Right? Old things pass away, all things become new. So as you raise your consciousness, conditions will change. Right? So if you want to sell a house, raise your consciousness. If you want to improve your relationship, raise your consciousness. Don't go to that person. Raise your consciousness in the relationship. Now, if that person doesn't raise with you, then you have a decision to make. But if you want to improve any condition in your life, we raise our consciousness to that level that we want to function at. If you want a blissful relationship, then function in the state of bliss. Right?
Right.
So that's what it is. cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. So you got to face, in order to experience your greatest love, you got to face your greatest fear. Otherwise, your fear is driving you. And that's what we said. To be the loving being you are and experience the utmost unity and love, it's about letting go. Right? So until you face your greatest fear, you're not going to experience your greatest love. So we already went through that. That's a repeat. We learn more wisdom from failure than we do from success. Right? Often you're going to find out what to do by learning what not to do before you learn what to do. How many people know that already?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, he who never made a mistake never made a discovery. So as long as you know that, then you know you're going to experience pain, which means now approaching that greatest fear becomes easier because you know that fear is probably from your greatest pain. But when you know that's part of my humanity, then I can feel more comfortable facing it. How to view pain instead of feeling self-worth. Well, there is no failure. Why? Because if you never failed, you never freaking tried anything. I mean, especially when you're developing a skill. If you're doing a skill for the first time, are you going to be good at it? No. Would you expect to fail? No. Right, you would. So, hey, the first time, I mean, I'm up here giving a talk. I mean, there's only a handful of people here, but I've talked to a couple thousand too. But that's what I do now, speak. First time I gave a talk, as a chiropractor right out of school, I had diarrhea all day to give a talk to 3 people.
Oh.
Literally, I had diarrhea all day. The following week, I had to give the same talk. I didn't have diarrhea. I thought it was a major win. I was still scared to death, right? In college, I had a speech class. We had to give a 5-minute speech. I mean, now I teach a seminar. I talk for 6 hours. 5 minutes. If someone said you can talk in 5 minutes, I'd be like, I can't even say my name in 5 minutes. See how many syllables I have in my last name, right? So 5 minutes, it's easier to give an hour talk than it is a 5-minute talk, right? But 5 minutes, I thought, this is ridiculous. Nobody should have to talk for 5 minutes. So there is no failure. What did I learn? What am I going to do? This is how you don't let the husks build up. Because are you going to screw up? Yeah, you're going to screw up and shit happens. And nobody's perfect. So the thing is, when you do it, what did I learn? What am I going to do? Now, when you learn, you get the lesson, you find the gift, even though you made a mistake, what am I going to do? And you do something different, then you let it go. You let it go. That way the husks don't build up. So I don't have to create all this self-deprecating language about how I screwed up and da-da-da and all this stuff. It's like, look, you know what? I blew it. Here's why I blew it. Yes, I was careless. But you know what? What did I learn? I need to pay attention to this. I need to take care of this sooner. Blah, 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 blah. What am I going to do? Next time it happens, I'm going to be on it. Okay, great. Now friggin' let it go. Right? And that's it. Because, are you going to make another mistake? Yeah. How many? Hundreds. If we got another 50 or 60 years left, of course, hopefully there's a lot less, because eventually if you really do what you learn, you do it less often. But then there's going to be new situations that you don't have skill in, and you're going to make another mistake in another situation. So when 2 people can go through life like this, it becomes a lot easier. Right? Because now you don't get a bunch of water over time that goes under the bridge. Now you have so many husks between you that you don't know how to find the corn anymore. Right? That's what happens in relationships. Is they don't know how to peel the husks off as they happen. You don't let them build up. That's connection. 3 steps to a breakthrough: change your story, change your state, change your strategy. Number 1, meditate. So here's the action steps for clearing energy. Now we're already 7 minutes over. This is actually an exercise that we do. Jada's witnessed me do this in the chiropractic boot camps. Same thing with Lisa. I mean, you clear people that have been to years and years and years of counseling in 30 minutes, man. They're clear, because counseling doesn't always clear the emotional energy. You can sit there and talk about it and cry all you want. But just crying about it, hey, victims cry all the time, right? They're depressed and they cry all the time, but that doesn't mean they come into an empowered state. So on the A part that we go through in the coaching, we'll actually be taking people through this. You know, this is rather involved. This takes like at least a half an hour. So decide what limiting belief or challenge you have. So you probably already know what's one challenge or problem in your life that you would like to solve. Because it's not the problem, there's a deeply seated emotional energy that is the root of the problem. The problem you're facing may be the condition, even if it's repetitive. The bottom line is there's an emotion under that decision, under that problem. And when you identify the emotion, you can identify the trigger, you can let go of the emotion, then the problem goes away. If you have a problem or you want to change a behavior, identify the emotion that's driving it. And when you change and reframe the emotion, you change the behavior, you eliminate the problem. How cool is that?
Cool.
So you can take this through on your own. Now, except it has another origin. So in other words, whatever problem you're facing isn't your problem. That's not your problem. There's an emotion underneath that's driving the problem. This is an effect of the problem. In chiropractic, if your neck is subluxated, you have a headache, right? The problem isn't your headache. The problem is your spine's out of alignment and causes stress to the nerves. It's the same thing. Your problem is only the symptom. It is not the origin. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Hey, shortness of breath is a side effect of congestive heart failure. Problem is the shortness of breath. Does that make sense?
Yes.
There's another problem. That emotion has a trigger. When you find the trigger, you find the perception, you change the perception, you eliminate the emotional energy, you eliminate the trigger and the problem. So when people say in a relationship, stop pushing my buttons, the problem isn't they're pushing the buttons, the problem is you have a button. That's the problem. Right? So the thing is, we may know what each other's buttons are. So in a more conscious, what?
Quit picking on me.
With a relationship, no, that's a core value. That's different than a button. But the bottom line is if this bothers me, and this is what upsets me, then this behavior is it, then don't sidekick it. When you know what it is, let's not approach it. So if an area is sensitive, and you know where your partner's sensitivities are, then don't push on. Now then that partner has a responsibility to eliminate that button over time, and you can work on it together. Right?
Yeah.
Feel the emotion in your whole body. So when you find the problem, what you want to do is, let's say, I'm violated and I feel anger, or I feel hurt. Anger is a response to hurt, so you may get to the hurt. So what you want to do is you want to feel whatever emotion that is in your body 1,000%. You actually want to accentuate that feeling. And then once you accentuate it, then you ask your subconscious mind, when it's totally feel like it's in every cell of your body, then you say, when was the first time that I experienced this feeling? And your subconscious mind knows. So in a sense, you ask God, you ask your subconscious mind, and you just relax. You have to relax your mind. The goal is not to think about when the first time was, because your conscious mind may not know it or may not go early enough. Because the majority of these things happen between birth and 7 years old. So you feel that emotion in your body, and then you say, when was the first time? And you just breathe, because breathing will interrupt your mind. And then you just relax and feel that emotion. If you think, you're going to go, God, I don't know. Because it's not in your conscious mind. So you can't always consciously recall it. Right? Now I'm going to give an example of this. I had a guy come up and we did this drill on him in one of my boot camps. And he stood up, who has a limiting belief, who's got a problem they want to solve. So a guy comes up and goes, I set goals, but I don't ever reach them. That's the symptom. So what we get back to is when he was 3 years old, his dad totally lost his temper and just beat the crap out of his older brother. He was so angry. When you watch his older brother get beat, he's 3 years old, he's hiding under the chair, under the kitchen table. Now imagine a 3-year-old watching his older brother get beat. You're thinking, he's going to kill him. And then he's going to kill me. Right? Would that be a perception of a 3-year-old? You're basically functioning on survival. The decision he made, of course, the dad's not going to kill his brother. He just lost his temper, right? So as an adult, we see these things. But as a kid, you're on survival. And so what he decided at that moment was, I'm not going to stand out. Because if I stand out like his brother did, I'm going to get beat. And now that goes against his survival. So his subconscious mind at that decision was, I'm not going to stand out. Now, you're a chiropractor, you're in your 30s, you own your own business, but you don't want to stand out. What's the probability you're going to reach your goals? Ain't going to happen. So he made a powerless decision at 3 years old that was affecting the success of his practice. So when we brought him to that, he recalled it. First time he had that feeling, you can ask God to bring it. Don't question the incident. There's people where we take them back and they're 4 years old and their mom forgot to pick them up at daycare. Oh, how often does that happen? Right? So your mom's 2 hours late, you're 4 years old. What are you thinking? I'm not going to be on my own forever. Nobody's going to come and get me. I'm by myself. I'm going to die. Right? Would that be typical of a 4-year-old?
Yes.
And mom's like, oh God, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot. You know what I mean? Whereas an adult, we see this, but this was another person that had other fears of intimacy because they felt abandoned at 4 years old because their mom left them in preschool. So the thing is, what I'm saying is you don't judge the incident because it could seem in your mind that it's something so insignificant from your perspective now. But you have to put yourself in who you were at that time and feel that feeling. Because at that time, it was a real feeling, it was a real perspective that had real meaning, that had a real emotion. And that emotion wired into your body. Now what you do is you match that feeling. Then you go, what was happening then? Hey man, I'm watching my dad beat the shit out of my brother, so I decided I'm not going to stand out. Okay? So you're like, wow, okay. I come to that decision. What feeling did you have? I was totally scared. What decision did you make at the time? I'm not going to stand out. Accept whatever it is. Whatever you come to, then accept it. Right? Then you get all the emotion out. Now what you do is, you literally scream, throw a tantrum, do whatever you want. You be yourself at that time and picture that 3-year-old boy. Now you separate dad, the whole incident. All you do is focus on one thing. You're 3 years old and imagine the terror that you would experience. The lack of love, your thrival is threatened. Your dad is supposed to be, responsible for you, is beating the shit out of your brother, the confusion, all that stuff. You get all of it out. You imagine that little kid crying, screaming, projectile vomiting, whatever. Now we've had people going through this exercise with like 120 people around, and you can just see they have to, as they're going through this, they have to express it. So they'll sit there and yell, ah! So what we usually do is we go, okay, everybody, show them how to yell the pain out. So we got 120 people yelling, that way that person feels comfortable. And they're usually, at the top of their lungs, and blah, blah, and they get it all out because what are they doing? They're being that kid at that time, getting the emotional energy out. Now here's what happens. Now you don't stop until it's all out. Every microgram of that energy is out. And when you're done, you feel totally at peace. Right? You feel relaxed. That 3-year-old at that time is like peaceful and happy. And you're just sitting there totally happy. You're not stressed at all. Because all the energy's out. Then what you do is you say, well, let's look at who you innately were. So if you took yourself at 3 years old and you look at what were the qualities God gave you. Hey, you were smart, you were joyful, you're mischievous, you're adventurous, you're loving, you're kind, you're playful, right? Imagine yourself at 4 years old. Before you knew anything, where all you did was you're just being you as you are, right? What were you like? You're an artist, so you're creative, you're probably playful and fun, artist, very loving, generous, kind, giving, maybe a bit, I was totally mischievous, but there's an entrepreneur in the making. right? So you look at who was I? And you fill that little kid, you at that time, with those feelings. You literally come in touch with who you innately are. And then what you do is you imagine that kid walking into you as if by osmosis and growing up into you, and you feel all those feelings. Now then, what are you feeling? You're feeling, I'm smart, I'm joyful, hey, I'm a bit mischievous, but adventurous, loving, kind, playful. And you feel those in your body, and what you're really doing is connecting with who you really are without all that messed up emotion. You've actually cleared that emotional energy out. Now you can do this at any point in your life. So if you have a memory, hey, when I was 22, this happened. You can go back to being 22. You imagine yourself, get all the energy out. Hey man, you can scream in a pillow if you need to physically do something. Just get the energy out till it's gone. And then what do you do? God, who was I at 22 innately? Man, I was in college, I was fun, I was smart. Hey, I was bartending, I was having a great time. Man, my grades could have been a little better, but I ended up in chiropractic school anyway. I knew I had a purpose. You know what I mean? So, and then you find all those good traits, you absorb those traits into you, and every time you clear an incident, now here's the deal. There's so many incidents, the way you clear them all is go back to the first one. And it's going to be something that happened between 0 and 7. That's it. And you're not going to remember, it's got to come out of your subconscious mind. Unless you've done this before and you know what the incidence is. But if you look back and you still have the feeling, you got to get the energy out. Anytime your subconscious mind brings up a memory and you feel an emotion, a negative emotion, it means get the energy out. Where you can stop, or at some point recall that experience, be you at that time, get the energy out, literally physically get it out, clear it, and every time you do that, you're going to be a little more clear. You're going to feel a little lighter. You're going to feel a little happier. And until eventually, it may take a while, you're clearing out all this stuff. But the way you clear out the majority of it is getting the first time. Now, you may not be able to get to that first time. You may have to clear things out. You may have to peel the onion a little bit to be able to get to that first time. Does anybody not remember their childhood? Okay, so when you have vague memories, first of all, it's in your subconscious mind, it's in your spirit. It's because there was a trauma. And so here's the key. You can't try to remember it with your conscious mind. It's got to come from your subconscious mind. So you ask the question, you take a breath, you clear yourself, and just what's the first thing that comes up? It's got to percolate up from your subconscious mind. But you have to, in a sense, tease it up. You have to invite it. And literally put yourself back in that age without trying to remember. But let it come up. Now once you do that, and that age walks into you, man, breathe those feelings in. You will literally feel the joy, the peace, the love, the playfulness, all that stuff. You'll feel it again. And then what you do is, and then you reframe. So you go back to that point. You know, like the kid, the 3-year-old. Hey, what was your dad going through? Man, my dad was under so much stress. The marriage was bad. His job sucked. We had financial issues. Hey, my brother popped off like he always does. At the wrong time, my dad got pissed. So you understand, your dad wasn't trying to kill your brother. Your dad has his own shit. Because here's the thing. Our parents are mom and dad. They're not allowed to be people. Would you agree? Mm-hmm. It's like, you're my mom and dad. You're supposed to take care of me. You're supposed to love me unconditionally. You have to be perfect. You're not supposed to cause me any pain. But we don't realize they were people going through their own shit. So when you look back at your perceived violator, then you say, wow, how much pain did they have to be able to express that? And then you look at them with compassion. It's another soul on a journey. And then you have forgiveness. But you have to get yourself into a higher state to see that. So what do you have to do first? Change your story. Change your state. And then you need a strategy. So you got to change your state, change your story, give it a new meaning. And the bottom line is they're doing the best they could with what they knew at that time. They're expressing their own pain, right? Then you see them from new perspective. You have compassion, forgiveness. You see them as a soul on a human journey going through their own shit. Now it's, what did I learn? Hey, I made a decision that was an inaccurate decision. None of this stuff's been true. And it's affected multiple things in my life, and I'm grateful for it. Because what did I learn? How did it help you evolve? How did that help you along your soul purpose? And then you can begin to get the gift, and that's how you release the pain. Right? What gift did it give you? Then create 3 action steps. So what am I going to do every day? So you remember that feeling of joy and playfulness, of, all those feelings, being loving. And then you develop rituals every day that remind you of that. So then you go, what are 3 things I'm going to do for myself that I can bring back to my mind that this is who I really am? Now, once you've been through H, that more intense experience that you guys went through, you're already at honor God within yourself. So going through this process becomes a lot easier. You've already established daily rituals because we've already established spirit, mind, body rituals day and night. So we've already done this. So by the time you get to forgiveness, all this becomes second nature. How cool is that?
Oh.
It's totally cool. So if you memorize this process, or you want to call me, I'll give you the steps again. You can take yourself through this and actually pick and actually identify what's been holding you back. Hey, camera person, can we get up here? Thanks, you guys, for going through A. Next month, we're going through L, living in now. So once we clear all this stuff, man, next month's going to be intense. So we'll let you know it's coming. Be there.